Hello, and welcome to another episode of the 2 Minute Warning. I am your host, Perry Busby. The 2 Minute Warning is brought to you by the Westside Gazette. Uh, Westside Gazette has been serving the community of South Florida and the African American community specifically for the past 50 years. And I'm proud to bring on my co-host, the publisher of the West Side Gazette, Mr. Bobby Henry. Bobby, how you doing, my brother?
I am terrific and getting better. It's been a while, Perry, since we delivered, if you will, the 2 minute warning. So we had a little.
It has.
Yeah, but nevertheless, we're here with some interesting topics, and I'm just glad to be back to be able to bring something to a listening and waiting audience. Yeah.
Exactly. And man, so much has gone on since we were last here, and yet somehow it still seems like it's some of the same things.
Hmm. Hmm. A little acronym, if you will, SSDD. Same stuff, different day. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And so you understand what Marvin says. Sometimes it makes you want to holler, throw up your hands, and we've seen a lot. COVID. We're still dealing with COVID. Still dealing with over policing in our communities and Black people under attack for just going out to pick up a bite to eat.
I saw a shocking video of a Karen incident, if you will,
right
on the subway. I mean, look at people. Really, please pay attention to what you're doing. Like Perry alluded to, these are some difficult times, man. You got COVID and loss of jobs, and like you said, the mispolicing, if you will, and then you have the audacity to get in someone's face,
right.
and threaten them and hit them, and you expect nothing to happen.
Right.
I'm not condoning violence.
Right.
But I wish.
Yeah. Yeah, but I mean, it does. In some ways, it makes you a little bit more hyper aware. I mean, whereas you used to just go into the grocery store, now you're going in and you're looking around just to make sure.
Yeah, man. And then of course, the political atmosphere. Wow, man. We don't know if it's a D or R. The D or the R's are fighting, or the D and D's fighting. And just
are they fighting? Because seem like it's staying the same.
Staying the same.
I mean, I've heard this rhetoric before, and and it's. In fact, no, it's not the same. It's hurting. It's hurting a lot of people. And I think that's again with COVID. I mean, I think even with the eviction moratorium, we really don't know how that is affecting many homes.
And then if you're not vaccinated, you might not be able to go to work.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I heard one of the property developers here who owns several properties. He made it a part of the lease that if you were going to lease, that you needed to show proof of vaccination. Some people say that's wrong. Is it?
That question has split families. And has caused some serious, would need to be serious dialogue. If you can't get vaccinated, man, get vaccinated. You know.
Yeah, 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 because we're being hurt so many ways, but man, COVID is really having a, a detrimental impact in our communities. I mean, some families, and so death once again is changing our communities, and we really need to start paying attention to this, you know, uh, as we move ahead.
Hmm. Hmm. Okay. Okay. That may be the door opening for us to get into this broadcast. I, if I
Hmm.
could just give me one moment, I'm gonna just pardon me 1 second. Let me see if I can get
Okay.
one of our guests. You can continue the dialogue to get in
Okay.
contact with Ariel to see how she can make sure she comes into this this backstage. Uh, okay.
Yeah.
Uh, Go ahead, Perry. Talk to the people while I try.
Okay. Well, we were watching. But again, this does, as you know, I'm always talking elections, and this goes right back to elections, and we have got to be mindful um, that in some ways, if people lives are being hurt, their ability to go back to the poll after giving voting a shot makes that a really hard argument to get some people out. And I think Democrats are finding that hard, um, especially in light of what's going on with voting.
Mm-hmm.
And so, how can you ask people to come out and support you and support your agenda when you're not even supporting the very basic, and that is securing my right to vote? And so these are, I think, are going to be some tough questions that people ask. you know Poor people are not going to go to Republicans, and that helps Republicans. And if Democrats aren't willing to, well, I shouldn't say aren't willing, but if Democrats can't come up with a way to ensure that voting rights are not further uh, destroyed, 2022 is going to be a really interesting year.
Oh
I
yeah.
mean, because now we're seeing Republicans and all of these right wing people go after some local positions where we already know turnout is low. So when your school board starts looking crazy and sounding crazy, these are just parts of what's going down and how our democracy is being attacked in some subtle and not so subtle ways.
And
But anyway,
yeah, yeah. Let's, we could offer some teasers for our upcoming shows. Yeah, it is a political season. There are some things happening. You know, one thing in particular, I know Perry, you and I have been discussing, and that's mental health in our judicial system. So,
yes.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. And one of the things that I want to uh, help us introduce to our audience is just that we really want. We're not saying this is a political show, but you do need to understand not just the politics, but the people who actually are speaking on your behalf. And I don't know about you, but I need to know who's speaking on my behalf, and that's not politics. That's just good sense.
good sense. Okay,
Yeah.
okay, okay. Um, I'll do this one more time. We're trying to bring them. But
Yeah.
let's get to it,
We're
man.
working on it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we got a very interesting show tonight, and it's one that everybody, everybody, if you're living, you, a family member, a friend, an enemy, believe it or not, you're gonna visit the same place one time or another. So we want to talk a little bit about a situation that came about um, when the how do we want to say it? How do I say this? Well, hell, when some land wanted to be sold, uh, and it was done not in a proper manner. That's just
Right.
the dirty part of it. But
Right.
but if we will, let's bring on let's bring our guest on here. Uh,
Okay. Yeah.
I want
Because and as I say, this is also a fight that is happening in many other cities in this across the nation. Again, in Tulsa, as they're doing development and discovering that there are some graves that were being destroyed. This is not anything new, but we do need to be aware of it when it's in our own backyard.
Mhm.
And this is something that's happening now. And so rather than wait until it's after, I'm excited uh, to learn more about this. Again, I'm learning Broward, so I want to understand uh, just how important this cemetery was and how it came to be, and what this fight is about and why we need to add our voices to it.
Yeah. So this conversation, Westview Community Cemetery, a bone rattling mess. So to get
Wow.
started, let's bring on. Let's see. I don't think the representative has made it into the studio yet. So uh, why don't we bring on Miss Terry Ann Williams? Terry is a community activist right out of Pompano. She's a candidate for a Senate position, but what I think is more importantly is Terry Ann, her heart bleeds Pompano, and it goes out for the residents of Pompano. So if you will, please join us in welcoming Miss Terry Ann Williams, please. Hello.
Hi, thank you for having
Hi.
me, Bobby and
Mhm,
Mr. Perry. Good
mhm,
to see y'all.
Hi. Welcome.
mhm. Okay. So Terry, tell us just a little bit. Get our appetites ready for this discussion. Tell us just a little bit.
Well, I can give you the history of Westview as I know it. It was basically established in 1952 during the time of segregation, where black folk were buried in the Pompano Beach Cemetery off of Federal Highway in a basically white community. And they felt at that time that black bodies would contaminate their white bodies, and they basically said we wanted these bodies out of here. The property was given to the community by Mr. Sam Bonner, who then gave it to Mr. Paul Hunter. And Hunter allowed the people to be buried there. It was a community cemetery. It was a colored cemetery, community cemetery, and now Westview Cemetery. And it was given to them because we had nowhere to go. And even today, there is not a lot of cemeteries where black people can afford to be buried. And this is a homegrown cemetery. It is a historic cemetery. You have Rosa, not I was going to say Rosa Parks. You have Esther Road there. You
Mhm.
have war veterans there. You have former slaves. Children are there, and it's just very disheartening to find out that individuals have moved into a contract almost 2 years ago and never came back to the community to tell us that you were selling the cemetery.
Okay, Miss Williams, if I could, can I get you to hold that right there? Good.
Sure.
That's a good point. Now, we're gonna bring on another guest. Uh, this person has a business that started off cleaning those grave plates or faces or uh, markers, if you will. And from that, I think it was back in 2008, she started cleaning off graves. And then she went into uh, establishing her own business, Angelic Monuments. Miss Gina Mahone, Miss Hankerson, can we welcome her to the studio, please?
Good evening.
Good evening. Good evening. How are you?
I am well. Thank you for asking. How are you?
Terrific and getting better.
Great.
So, welcome back home, Gina. Gina.
Well, thank you.
I know you went away for a minute to take care of your daughter and your grandson, uh, and now you're back. Sort of. Can you give us a little bit of your involvement at Westview? Just a little bit now. We're gonna bring on somebody else to do something else.
Okay. Well, like you said, I started cleaning headstones in 2008. And a part of the cleaning of the headstones was because that's our family heritage. My grandmother always taught us to clean the headstones. We take care of our loved ones. And as you start to clean, you visit many different cemeteries in the city, Tri-Cities. That cemetery, Westview Cemetery, was one of the most difficult, disgusting, unkept cemeteries because in order for me to do a cleaning, I physically had to meet with the family so they can show me where their loved one was buried because there are no numbers, there's no one knows. So they do a lot of different things. They color the headstones, they, just so that they can identify them or their family members, if they're visiting, can identify their loved one. Many conversations with the keepers of the grounds to say, can we just use numbers, give them row 12, tell them that they're on row 8, just so that they don't have to walk all over the cemetery. And this is how Angelic Monument came about, because I found people walking over the cemetery a lot because they didn't have a headstone. But this one, there is not a headstone, but a vault on top of the ground. And you just couldn't find a loved one. And it's still the same. And it's actually worse. I mean, I've been in a cemetery where there were actual open graves. There wasn't a vault. They buried it underground, and the grave was actually open. I can look down and see the casket. So,
Okay. Ooh.
yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Wow. I'm
Yeah.
Yeah, Perry, help me out on this one. This is
No.
we got some footage. We got some footage we're gonna show,
Right.
but we just want people to be aware of
Yeah.
when you get ready to show the footage. Has the representative made it into the studio? She must not have made it into the studio.
Yeah.
Okay. Perry, you wanna?
Yes.
Oh, here we go. Yes, she's coming.
Here
over.
she is.
Yeah. Okay. We are honored to have Representative Patricia Hawkins Williams from District 92, which is Pompano Beach, Florida's district. Thank you, Representative, for joining us. We've been talking about Westview Community Cemetery, and we want to know what's your take on this community cemetery?
Yeah, Bobby, as the story unfolds, I did some research. This has not just started happening. I went back as far as over 20 something years, have complaints about, someone going out and looking for their loved one, unable to find them. But I remember years ago when we used to respect the dead. Now I'm understanding if it's correct what I'm hearing, they're trying to sell part of the dead. And I'm just, dumbfounded to know that we would actually be at this place in society where we don't respect where we lay our loved ones. I'm just trying to get to the bottom of it and, bring the community together, because right now we're in a fight amongst each other, and we all need to be standing together.
I do have, I've seen a letter from one attorney to another attorney concerning trying to get an injunction to stop the sale of that property. Can we do this before we go any further? And Ms. Terry Ann, you begin to give us an understanding to the history of it. There's a young man waiting to come on who actually and I'll let Perry introduce him, but who actually filed for the historical acknowledgement to that cemetery. Yeah.
Did he?
Mhm.
Oh, okay.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah. Uh, are we ready to bring him on? Yes. And he is no stranger to the 2 minute warning. He was here a few months ago as we discussed the his, events of Reuben Stacy. Uh, but Roberto Fernandez is professor of African American history, and I hope I'm getting it right, at the Florida International University. He's done some extensive studies within the cemeteries in and around South Florida, Miami-Dade, as well as within Broward. He is a well resource of understanding uh, the true legacy within Broward County. And so I want to bring on Roberto Fernandez.
Hi, thank you, Perry, for that nice introduction. Hello, everyone. Good evening.
Yeah.
All right.
Roberto, just share with us about some of the history, about some of the work you've done in and around Miami-Dade and Broward.
So the big thing that I've started was a service learning project with my high school students, first at Boyd Anderson and then at Plantation High School, where we went to Woodlawn Cemetery and we conducted oral history interviews. And then we've also done cleanups at the cemetery. And most recently, which is still like a work in progress, we've mapped the different headstones at Woodlawn Cemetery, and we hope to have a index and map sometime soon to share with the community so they can kind of like locate their loved ones at Woodlawn. And then from there, it kind of blossomed into, I started visiting other Black cemeteries in South Florida and then throughout. I've been up to Fort Pierce, to Tallahassee, to Orlando, visiting Black cemeteries. And every once in a while, I find one that there's no documentation on. And that's what happened with Westview. Hazel Armbrister several years ago like took me out there. She goes, okay, this is my cemetery and some of my friends are here and I need you to do here what you've done at Woodlawn. And so that's what led me to start looking at Westview and to learn more about it and to try to anticipate how I can help the community with our students and stuff like that.
Roberto, I said in the article, and I list the date as 1940. Now, can you explain between the difference between 1940 and 1952, so we can get just try to bring some clarity, just a little bit more. Mm-hmm.
So for me, I think in the research that I've done, and it's been very limited, one of the things that I've noticed with a lot of Black cemeteries is there is limited information on them. Like trying to find people that have written books and stuff like that. It's rare. So I base it based on stuff that I found, but 52 is kind of when I came about just because of the markers that are out there that I've seen. And so I hypothesized based on like the oldest burial that I found that's at least like a start date, but it is possible that it goes back further as far as when the cemetery was actually founded. So that's kind of like might be the disparity. You might have better information than I have, and so that could be a difference.
Yeah, we have spoken to two of the pioneers, two of the original board members from Westview Cemetery. That's something that maybe we can jump in on. What is so unique about Westview Cemetery compared to other cemeteries, Miss Terry?
What was it, Bobby? I'm sorry.
What's so unique about Westview Cemetery and the other 10 cemeteries in the ownership?
And the ownership of it,
yeah,
it belongs to the community.
Mm-hmm.
One of the oldest pioneers that were on the board. I mean, we had BJ McCormick all these older people. What happened is they expired. And I guess the individuals that were on the board taking over, they never kept any type of records. They wait on information that we have to get from someone else. The only other person I know that is still existing that was on the origination of one of those boards was Mr. Wooten, as well as Mr. Richard Macon. And Richard Macon and my mother and other people tell the story. They were given the cemetery. They put money toward it. They bought plots. My family has plots. Even when we purchased them, we have receipts. But when we went out a few weeks ago and I took her out there, someone else is in the plots that we had just in case family members needed to be there. And then, as you speak, my grandmother died in 1972. I found her grave, but it was covered with weeds, her and about 7, 8 other people. And that's that entire cemetery. And now they're burying 3 feet opposed to 6 feet. So it's very unique in the meaning of saying that it has been not upkept. I'm 55. When I was a young girl, I used to go out to the cemetery. I used to be able to find my grandfather. He's missing. His parents were slaves, and he came from Tweed County, Georgia. We can't find him. My sister was buried in 1960. Was it 62? We cannot find her nor my brother. And when you go to the cemetery again, as Gina Hankerson has said, as well, when you go there, it's weeded. You have graves there, but they're covered with weeds. And then you go and you can see bones. You're seeing bodies desiccated. The caskets you can actually see. The vaults are broken, and the new management, whomever they think they are, the North, the nonprofit organization, their goal was not to fix that cemetery up. They moved into a contract. Walter Hanna started out because he was doing community service hours there, and somehow he ended up on the board. And then you do a sale. I just left a meeting tonight. You do an attempt to sell and draw a contract up without going before the community. In the nonprofit, you have to have 5 to 9 people to be able to make a decision. They made a decision with 4 people. You have to notify the community, have a meeting, have notes, and all those things. I've even gone back and spoken to individuals that were burying bodies there. And Richard Macon buried more bodies than anybody in Pompano in that cemetery, and he's doing the best he can to try to inform people, but he can't see as well. Then I spoke to Woody Portier, who's also burying out there, and Pat Lockins was my relative, but he fought to try to make sure they had maps. He was going to bring the city in and the state to help them. They did not want that. That was years ago because they never had maps that they can remember where they are. So we're quite unique as to right now. I've been working with some people to go out and create a map, like the gentleman was saying, and we're trying to plot to put the names in the map as we see them. If they're unmarked, then we put unmarked. But then again, we have so many that's underneath, and where they're currently burying people, those plots were full. So how are you burying someone there?
Okay.
And they're burying 3 feet above the ground.
Okay, Miss Terry Ann, we gonna slow you down there for a moment.
Okay,
That's
please do.
Yeah, I know. This is close to home. State representative, from a legislative position, what is it that you would like to see, or perhaps, yeah, what is it you like to see concerning this historic cemetery?
It's true. If the information receiving is true, there is a contract placed to support of graveyard. I would like to see that stop because we have room there now. But what happens once that room has been taken up? Where are we going to go? This land was given to the Blacks to be able to lay their loved ones there. And once we run out of land, where are we going to go? You know, that we wasn't wanted at the other. We wasn't wanted back then. I don't know if anybody would want to go there now. I would love to see the board come together and the community come together to be able to map out what's already there to find the loved ones that's missing and be able to move forward as a community. In order for us to conquer a problem, we all be able to work together. And at this time, I don't see that happening. So, as the state legislator, this property is owned by the community. And if it's owned by the community, the city can't step in right now because it's owned by, quote unquote, a nonprofit organization. The state can not overstep what's already in place with that nonprofit. I have not seen any bylaws or anything like that. I don't know what's in the rules, what they're being governed by. All of that is like a non-void because I have not seen any of those.
Okay. Now I want to back up, Ms. Tangerson. Your involvement at Westview back in 2008, when you found the deplorable conditions there, did you alert that to anybody? And if so, how?
Well, I'm trying to alert. There's no keepers at the cemetery. So you would have to try and locate Mr. Hunter. Is the only person that usually transacts any business as far as purchasing a grave space, locating a grave space, and he was not welcoming to doing anything about anything related to the cemetery other than selling a grave space, if I may. I mean, you can buy a grave space from him, but if you contact him to help you repair, fix, eventually it was repaired because the family was there and he was just very emotional about what he was seeing. So trying to get someone to help you in that cemetery, I think, is a problem. There is no care in that cemetery, and that's why you find those conditions. When I first started, I reached out to the politicians at that time, so I'm happy to see the representative on tonight. Hopefully this can go through the state. I mean, this is considered a privately owned cemetery, and they have different rules under Florida Statute 497 than, say, a municipality does. And I think it needs to be addressed because this is not just Westview, but as Roberto can probably attest to, possibly all over where you have African-American cemeteries, you have similar problems where they're not cared for. And as a community, it needs to come together. We need to come together and represent the deceased Black lives that matter, okay? Because we're not. When I first came on, I said, I'm going to take on this project. I really want to get this place fixed up. I had never seen anything like that before, but you wind up standing alone. So as I did not have a loved one there, I didn't really have much to say. And then being a monument retailer, they think I'm in it for another reason, which I was not, only because I just couldn't believe that something like this could be happening in my family heritage. We always took care of our loved ones' graves. So I think the community needs to come together. I think this needs to go before the state to amend the statute 497 to put some pressure. They're not regulated. They come to other cemeteries. No one comes to that cemetery to say, hey, what's going on over here? What are you doing? And is it because it's a Black cemetery that no one cares? Okay. I don't know. But the community needs to really stand up and come out and represent what's going on in order to stop this.
Okay. You know, Perry, you're coming in from Beaumont, and I understand
right.
that so you've experienced some of the same thing. And
exactly. Yeah, there was a cemetery not far from where I grew up at the time that was already indicated when I was growing up. And just recently, again, it's the same thing. There's development. The cities began to move forward, and unbeknownst to anyone involved, you had city workers tearing up vaults with jackhammers. And this was the city. I mean, and again, we had to quickly come in and put a stop order. Uh, but in that same vein, you could look down into the vaults. You could see caskets. There's parts of it that were kept up because the family had loved ones there and felt the need to keep it up. Uh, but I think, unfortunately, it becomes an indicator of our communities because our communities have changed. And if you have a community that no longer cares about the living, they sure as hell don't care about the dead.
Hmm. That's the point. That's the point. Let's do this. While Miss Henry readies the video, and we're going to take a look at just what we're talking about. But Roberto, I want you to go back when you filed for the historic recognition. You had some pictures there, and you also had some what were to believe to be markers. So it seemed to have had made some progress from when you were there, Miss Hankerson, up until Roberto filed those papers of March 2020. I think it was March. Yeah. So if we can, Miss Ariel, is the video ready?
Okay, so you think it was a thing here? That it was there.
So the cemetery does not say, okay, we need to get money somehow to put these vaults in the pay.
And look at this. This is all ended up. Look, somebody know one in there.
So that's being neglect. That's neglect. That's neglect. That's neglect. I don't care what it was. It's neglect. They own this cemetery. They say they bring the
Well, and that was only part of it. I mean, there's some photos too, and some other stuff. But we have another community person, Kevin Eason is trying to come in. I need to get him linked, see if we can get him in here. But Roberto, from what I saw on the documents, could you explain a little what was going on with that, or what's going on with that?
With the documents that I've filled out and submitted to the state.
Yeah.
So what that documentation is called, it's part of what's called the Florida Master Site File. So it is a historic registry of basically all the historic sites in the state of Florida. Now, one of the issues with the Florida Master Site File is that it relies heavily on archaeologists and involved people of the community to basically let the state know, like, hey, there's an important site here that you need to know about, and here's why it's important. So this could be like the Ally Building is in the Florida Master Site File, Woodlawn Cemetery. So any historic, site that's been documented should be in the Florida Master Site File. A lot of cemeteries, generally, not just black cemeteries, but cemeteries overall, are not very well documented in the Florida Master Site File. So the documentation that I did was basically making the state aware, hey, there's a historic cemetery here, it's a black cemetery, and then here's the information that I was able to collect related to this cemetery. So in the photographs that you mentioned, Mr. Henry, it's got it's got several headstones for the Roll family, Esther Roll, her sister, her father, who was a Bahamian pioneer that settled in Pompano. There's military markers. There's also some photos that include historic landscape, like the Dade County pine trees that are in the cemetery, which also kind of indicate what the landscape was like at the time when they first started, burying people at this site. So the purpose of this was to basically let people know, hey, this site is here, and this is why I think that it's eligible for possible inclusion on the National Register of Historic Places, in an effort to really do more to preserve the site. So it's really that first step, just saying like, hey, this place is here and it matters. That's what that paperwork essentially does.
Okay. Okay. And going back, State Representative, Ms. Hankinson mentioned, what was it? Something 4097?
497, Florida Statute 497. that governs cemeteries, funeral homes, monument companies.
Okay. And State Representative, I know you're entrenched in the community. Has have there been uh, a group that is centered around perhaps getting the restoration needed and other funds needed to make this happen?
Um, Bobby approached me about getting any funds for the cemetery. One of the citizens, which was Mr. Ed Phillips, about putting legislation in to get funding. But if the records is not in place that the nonprofit board has, the state is not going to give money toward something that's not correct. I don't know what type of record keeping they have in anything. Case in point, Deerfield, City of Deerfield received money in 2019 for their cemetery. Now it's a historical site for the City of Deerfield. I was able to secure those fundings for that. No one in the City of Pompano has approached me. No documents has been given to my office. Um, Nothing in that manner for me to be able to move forward to doing anything to assist the cemetery. I am entrenched in the city of Pompano. I'm boots on the ground. If I know something is going on, something is needed, and I can help, I'm 100% there. But I can't put myself in a position when I know things are not right.
Okay.
If we can sit down as a group, as an organization, as people that care about the cemetery and get to the bottom of where we need to go in order for us to put something in for legislation's sake, I'm there 100%.
Okay. Couple of things. I see that Mr. Eason is back in the studio, so we want to bring him on. But I also see that Roberto, we'll give you an opportunity to talk further about the Abandoned African American Cemetery Task Force. We'll give you the opportunity to talk about that. Mr. Eason, how are you?
Good afternoon. How are you doing, Bobby?
We are terrific and getting better.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, absolutely. Kevin, can you give us, not to write the book, but can you give us a little bit of knowledge that you have about Westview Community Cemetery and the land and what is proposed to happen?
Sure. I thank everyone for showing up on last Tuesday, Wednesday, that they had the rezoning trying to rezone the property. But it was stalled for 60 days. So we need to regroup. And there's a lot of things that are taking place with the attorneys. But as a community, we need to prepare ourselves for November 17th to block that rezoning again, which is very, very, very important. So everyone in the community have a part to play. So if you have not played your part, that's the part that you can play. We need you to show up and show out at that particular time. Like Ms. Williams said and Terry said, we need to pull together as a community. We had a meeting this afternoon with the clergy, and I think they're all on board. So that was a pretty productive meeting that we had this afternoon. So I think everyone is on board, but this is just the beginning. Just the beginning. We have a large hurdle to cover. And getting back to the original owner, that was the property was donated, which is no relation to Mr. Hunter. That was made clear to me from the family member as well too. And I think from my grandfather that purchased 13 plots at that particular time, but he was smart enough to block his in. So if you ever run up on a section that's blocked off with look like about 13 plots, he did that at that particular time. So we have identified our plots, but some of the others that didn't have that opportunity, they're just got lost in the shuffle. And also too, the video that you showed was a disgrace. And I asked one of their caretakers out there, how long has that been that way? And he said, since Hurricane Wilma. So that's been 6 years ago. So that's plenty ample enough time to take care of that problem. And if it's certain procedures that they need to follow, then they need to get legal advice or get the proper information and take care of it. That's what you do. You're taking care of a grave site. So you should have that information in front of you, and that's been a long enough time for those loved ones to been taken care of. And we want to make sure that we get the right people in there the next time, and have an oversight board that will make sure this does never ever happen again to no one that have loved ones out there.
You know, I want to be clear and go on record by saying this. We are not attacking anyone. That is not the purpose. But what we're doing is pointing out some of the injustices that are occurring out there. Now, so with that being said, at the press conference on Sunday at Westview Community Cemetery, it was stated, and I kind of overheard it, so I don't want to go with secondhand information. There was some men out there cleaning up or attempting to clean up the cemetery. Ms. Terry, I do believe you were engaged in a conversation with them.
Yes, I was engaged in a conversation with Walter Atkins, the man that is responsible for the vaults, and I guess they use this thing called a backhoe or whatever it is to dig the graves. And he stated that the city had brought some paint to them. They had been out 7 o'clock that morning, trying to paint up the cemetery and what have you. And then he went and purchased 4 more cans of things of paint for them to paint the vaults, the cemetery, the grave sites. I'm gonna just say this: no, we're not bashing anyone. You all didn't know, but we did contact the state. They are moving forward to investigate because Florida statute 497-285.1 says that if there's derogation of that cemetery with those bones and those pictures that we sent out on Monday, that causes them to be able to move forward, even though it is a nonprofit. So they do have arms where they can do things, and there's injustices. I've sent some information over to the Florida State Sessions to see about investigating the cemetery. I want to touch on something, Bobby, if you will. When it comes to the historical portion of it, the contract that they tried to put in place, I guess they believe it was on different numbers. It's one number that is under. And also, I work with Rick Ferrara, I believe his name is, with the Broward County Preservation Session. We're going to be trying to move forward because in Pompano, you have to have it listed within the city. So we have to go through zoning to ask them to also make it historical. And that could put somewhat of a halt on this particular contract that those individuals have entered into, Walter Hanna and the other individual, the chairman, Vicente Thrower, and whomever. They have done these things. So the state is aware. I spoke to the director. I had it done from my office to be able to move forward. And they are willing to do the investigation because you're showing that there are graves that are open, they're disturbed, and then under that particular statute, when it's that way. And then I want to say this: when it comes to money, under that same statute, the city and the county can come in and maintenance the cemetery and secure it, not for a long period of time, but until we get it together. So they do have that option where they can come in and give us, do what they need to do to try to maintenance that cemetery and get it back up to par.
Okay. I'm sorry, but
I was going to say, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
As far as what Kevin said, as far as blocking off his family plots, that's so very true. So I have families who will purchase a plot or have purchased a plot and put down a headstone just to secure their space, because they know that if they don't, it could be resold, or they'll go there and someone else will be buried in their space. In addition to that, I can say, and maybe this is all as a result of all that you're doing and all that's happening in the community right now, customers are actually receiving phone calls. Didn't even know anyone had records to call anyone, to say, hey, you need to put a plate on your loved one's grave. Thank God, that's great that they're making moves. So there is some progress going on to better the cemetery as far as people being able to identify their loved ones. So they're actually making phone calls, and they're making them like fast and continuous. So it's like, oh, you need to do it now. Well, it takes time to do this. And believe it or not, the monument business has been affected by COVID. So granted, it's very slow, but they're calling these people like continuously. Oh, you need to put something on right now. What I understood was there was an agreement between the funeral home directors and I guess a vault company that every time they buried a person, that they would be responsible for putting a plaque immediately on the vault top so the families could identify their loved ones. That happened for a short period of time and it went away. I don't know whose responsibility it was. I wasn't in on the agreement, but I know that there was an agreement, because people were becoming upset with even funeral directors, because they don't even, and normally a funeral home director knows in any other cemetery where they're burying that person, except for Westview. They know the spot that they gave you, that they, made available that day. Well, when you go back and that grass is no longer there, now there's 5 vaults when you only saw your grave space. So again, you don't know where your loved one is buried. So there's some progress going on as far as, I guess, they maybe trying to do the things that should have been done some time ago.
As I listen to this, and again, I'm Kevin talked about what his family did to help prevent. Coming from this, what are some telltale signs that maybe you all can tell our listeners what to look for? I mean, because when it gets to death, we really don't get into the business of it. And then we find out later that it's really some low down business. And so what are some of the telltale signs that you begin to see that maybe others can maybe begin to ask, about where their loved ones are? I mean, because everyone sort of thinks that the cemetery is going to be taken care of. They don't know who. In fact, they may not even know who owns it. So what are some of the things that maybe you can share with some of our listeners about what they can begin to acquire to come from this?
Well, if you will, I'll go first. Let me
Sure.
tell you what I expected of the cemetery. Unfortunately, I buried my son February the 7th. He died of an intracranial bleed. When I went to the funeral home, my son had already done his burial at the age of 19 because he acquired cancer. He was 14 years out in remission. We weren't expecting him to die, but this is what I taught my family. I went to the funeral home, which is Portier. We laid everything out. No one offered a headstone, any of that type of stuff. Never. So because I wasn't burying in Westview, I went to Forest Lawn. And let me tell you how they handle things. What they do is you go out to the facility. We pick the location of where they wanted to be. My 3 children. They chose the wall, although we're purchasing an outer vault outside for the family. And by him passing sooner than expected, I chose the Muslim, and they don't offer to you right away, but you need it. I had to tell them what I wanted on it. For each letter, there was a bill. You have to pay for each letter, and then they give you the little, the flower pot and what have you, and they have it set up. They go through the whole process with you. Then if you're in the ground, they can put people 8 feet down. Like my mother, my father, my brother will be buried together at Forest Lawn. and they've already taken care of it. And they make sure you have the headstones prior to, and it's not the responsibility of the cemetery. But at Westview, you have people, like I said, they established a nonprofit. Richard Macon, one of the oldest pioneers that knows this. I spent hours with him a couple of nights ago, and he explained, we got this cemetery. We had to move them bodies from the Pompano, and we just threw bodies in the ground. And as Gina has said, and Kevin, what happened when they bought the plots, he stated it. It was the family's responsibility to block this session off. Now they can ask for the headstones or what have you, but they have a facility at Westview where they kept headstones. Where it's alleged that they're still there. So people, they don't have a real system in place at all. And I'm praying, because we have gotten involved, because this fell in my lap, by accident, because we didn't know there was going to be a meeting about the cemetery. Someone at the CRA decided to inform us, have us to be informed in the community about a contract deal that had went through with this company. Had we not known that, it was oblivious to everyone in that community. They have nothing in place. And even though, like Kevin talked about, a meeting we went to today, some people feel blamed. We're not blaming anybody. But if you put your name on a document and you know right from wrong, then you knew it was wrong for you to do that. So they don't have nothing in place at Westview. And they don't really want people to come in and to make the change. But the people, they came out, and when I tell you, Mr. Perry, I have never seen Black folk come out like they did when they find out that cemetery is being sold. And they cannot find their loved ones. They've been making complaints to the state since 2005 and before then. But as it has been stated, nobody wants to do anything. They tell you to go to this person, that person. Who handles the vault? I spoke to the vault man. Why can't you fix these graves if you knew they had been damaged like this since Wilma? Oh, well, they got to get the boss to pay. Well, you should have a system in place. Do you have a bank account? These are the things that are going on. And now that this pimple has burst, I believe that justice will serve its purpose, and I'm hoping it does, because we're going to keep fighting. We're going to go back to the zoning board as we did before, and we got them to defer this matter. We're just going to keep moving, because we're not going to let 4 people take over this cemetery who has made a mess of it. And you can't, and then you're going to get money from people. They're not even taking checks, some of them. They go and pick up the money the night before the burial from Mr. Richard Macon, because they know he can't see. So he's being abused in this area. So it's a long process. It's a legal process that's going to play out, and I think that things are going to work out.
I agree. I think that there's a lot of land still at Westview Cemetery, and it's called plotting. And if they would plot that cemetery, then each grave space would have an identifier, and folks could know where their graves are. In addition to that, we work with funeral home directors, as Terry was alluding to. It's called getting your house in order. So as a community, we need to get our house in order. And these are important things that need to be done in advance. You'll know where your loved one's going to be buried. You'll have already taken care of that, instead of maybe not taking care of it, and then you're caught off guard. You don't have the finances. And a lot of people went to Westview Cemetery only because it was $1,000. You give $1,000 and you could be buried. So if you had your house in order and you pre-planned and you pre-arranged, you would know where your loved one is going. And I'm not saying that there's a problem with going with Westview to Westview Cemetery. That's family heritage. There's many loved ones there that want to be buried next to their loved ones. That's wonderful. But let's get our house in order so you can know this, you can do this, and it's not, you're not so, it's emotional time. I think that when death comes, no matter how high or how low, we're all on the same level when death comes, and it's just nothing like that day. So you're not always thinking as clear. This day is unlike any other day, and people can take advantage of you. And as far as headstones, again, remember I said there was an agreement between the funeral home directors and the vault people, and maybe Mr. Hunter, to identify each vault at the time they did the burial. Well, as a community and as a funeral home directors, you have to have requirements and demands from the funeral home director. Ask them to include that maybe in their bill when they're doing this, to guide you. They're directors, and they can direct you to whom you should go to have this done. whether it be me, Angelic Monument Company, or any other monument company in the city, we're available
Yeah.
to do so.
And also too, this is just an early fight for us, but we're not going to give up. We're going to continuously put the pressure on them. And like I said, this what happened last week at the zoning meeting was just just the beginning. And but this is just, you're going to see a lot of it on in the news. So, and it must take place regardless of who it may affect. But we're not out to, like Terry said, we're not out to attack anyone, but we want to get to the bottom of the matter and make sure that we get a fresh start with all of the proper stuff that we need. We need that land. We may want to put a mausoleum out there. You need restrooms out there, and it needs to be taken care of properly. So, and we can't give up any land. We need that land because of the land, the 4 acres that they're proposing to sell. If you sell that off, there's nothing left. There's absolutely nothing left. So we're going to continuously the fight, whether it's a cemetery or anything else, is just a beginning for the community all around together. So, and it's sad it takes something like this to bring us together, but we're going to continuously put up the fight.
You know, before we hear from Roberto about that organization that will help, while I was out there, I was talking to Mr. Wooten, and Mr. Wooten made reference to what was considered the pauper's graveyard, and that's the area that is proposed to go up for sale. Now, if I'm understanding correctly, we don't know if there are any bodies over there or not. And as we walk the grounds of Westview Community Cemetery, as it abuts Copings Road, it may be the same situation as it was with Woodlawn, with graves being buried under Copings Road. So, State Representative, have you considered, or should I say, how would you bring the Department of Transportation in to take a look at that area along Copings Road, and then to have the area of which is proposed to be sold to see if there are any graves under that ground?
The state has a cemetery committee, and I have spoken to one of the members that serve on that board, and I am, to report back where we are in this situation. Maybe it'll be something that they will pick up on this time as we return to Tallahassee under on the committee. I will do whatever I can to ensure that we can secure the land itself and have it properly taken care of. But I don't know from the community if they want the state to step in and take over. So you like between a rock and a hard place. The community wouldn't want the state to step in to take over. Then you have the board members that's over it is not doing what they're supposed to do. But as a community as a whole, it's our responsibility to make sure that we step in and do right by our dead.
Okay. Now, at this point, Roberto, that number one, that organization, number two, the situation with Woodlawn, how did how did the state get involved with that when it, in determining where those bodies are buried?
So the organization that I was referring to is in, oh my goodness, this past legislative session, the legislator basically, the state legislator passed the Abandoned African American Cemetery Task Force. So they basically established a task force to, collect information about abandoned African American cemeteries in the state of Florida. All right. The reason that I use the air quotes is because there's a perception that all of these black cemeteries are abandoned. I think the issue is that the Eurocentric perspective since the white people don't know these stories, don't know where these cemeteries are. They see them as abandoned, but the black community that lives close to these cemeteries know exactly where it is. They know exactly who's in there, and they can probably tell a whole lot of information. Unlike, archaeologists or public archaeologists that are basically relying on whatever written documentation there is. So, that's why I want to say the whole abandoned thing is one of those issues. But the focus has been they've met twice already. Dr. Marvin Dunn from South Florida, he wrote the book on Black Miami. He's written several other books on Florida Black history and stuff like that. He has spoken several, I think at both meetings, he's presented information and details about Rosewood's cemetery and stuff like that. So the task force is basically trying to collect data and try to figure out how to best document these cemeteries. And one of the things that did come up in one of the first meetings is that cemeteries in Florida are not very well documented. So, and it's not just a black cemetery thing, it's a cemetery thing. So, that's one. And then Bobby, if you can remind me of your second question. Oh, Woodlawn and how the state got involved. So with Woodlawn Cemetery, what ended up happening was, as Florida Department of Transportation does, they're basically planning ahead 20 years, 10 years, 20 years in advance. So projects that we're seeing happening today on the interstates were planned 10, maybe 15 years ago. And so what happened was the Florida Department of Transportation actually owned a portion of Woodlawn Cemetery, going, I don't remember precisely how much going into the cemetery past the existing fence that is there that separates I-95 from Woodlawn, but they actually owned that land as part of the right-of-way so they could expand I-95 if they needed to. So what the state did was that they subcontracted with an archaeological firm, and basically the archaeological firm came out and they did oral history interviews. They established a community board that basically is involved in hey, this is what's going on from us and here's what's going on. So throughout that process, they were, it's full transparency. Here's what's going on. Here's the status of it. And people who had loved ones, people who were, interested in, ensuring that this was done right, I would participate in some of those meetings as well. And they would basically give us an update. Here's what's going on. One of the things that they did, and there is an article in the West Side Gazette newspaper, if we look at going back to, I think, 2015, but there is one where we talk about the ground penetrating radar that they use to actually look at, what's under the ground. Because one of the things that, people are always concerned about is when we hear archaeologists, we think digging. And so the ground penetrating radar is an unintrusive way of checking to see if there are anomalies in the soil that might indicate human burials. And so what they did was they basically removed the entire chain link fence. They blocked off one of the lanes. They had the Florida Highway Patrol block off one of the lanes to keep enough distance for the safety of the workers out there. And they basically took, initially it was cadaver dogs just to see if there were points. And then after the cadaver dogs went out, then they went out with the ground penetrating radar to see what that showed. And it did show at the time that there were disturbances in the soil that indicate possible human burials. Now, we know because of other things that have happened since 2015, last year in April, an archaeologist, while the state was out there doing repair work to one of the lights on I-95, recovered a small human bone when they were kind of digging up to make the repairs. So he, collected the bone, and then he immediately got it he called the FHP. So they, he followed the procedure to make sure it was done right. And I know that the remain was buried at Woodlawn because I saw the little spot where the funeral home actually went in and reburied, and they had to actually take the ground penetrating radar out there again to make sure there was nobody buried underneath before they actually did the burial. So it was done, and the funeral home that did it for free. And so, because they were going to offer, and like, we'll do it for free. We've served this community, and so it's the least we can do. So the funeral home did it for free. So, as far as like, how do we know? One of the things that can be done is, easy ground penetrating radar. If we want to do something unintrusive, but that process is expensive. So, we need to be cognizant of expense. But then going back to the model with Deerfield, with the Brunhilde Richardson Knowles Memorial Park, which was a Black cemetery up in Deerfield, the state actually did provide funding to Deerfield to go ahead and do all the work that they did there. So I know that there are monies. I'm just not sure how the community would go about accessing that money. And then with everything with the board,
Right.
there's other issues.
Okay.
So
Okay.
Well,
Thank you.
the funding that the funding city of Deerfield received was put, appropriation was put through, given to me to actually go after that money for that cemetery. So a proposal was put together from the city. Now, this is different from the city putting forth something than a non-organization putting something forth. The process is the same, but the outcome could be very different.
Okay. Okay. So what I'm hearing, what I'm understanding, is that first of all, to stop the sale of the land. That's the first thing. Is that correct? And then restoring Westview to its proper state of a final resting place. Now, so how do we go about doing this? You've already got a committee formed, but not formed.
Well, I typed in the comment, asking Mr. He said he went to a meeting this afternoon. Was there any plans for us coming together as a community, working together to move forward or to stop the sale of the land itself? What was the outcome? Where are we now?
Okay, what happened, what's been in place for quite a while now, and it's going to happen this week. There's going to be an injunction filed through the courts, and the proper people that's need to be notified, as that's the next place that we're at. And as we do that, then we'll prepare for the next zoning meeting, which will be November 17th. So that measure's in place already.
Okay. Okay.
It seems as though there's a lot of different committees and moving parts. Is it possible that there can be some way, or maybe even Westside Gazette could keep the community notified of exactly what's going on, so that, I mean, like, Roberto has a lot of important information. State Representative Williams has information. Terry has information. So there's a lot of good things that are going on. Terry's working with the state. So is there anything that the state can do to circumvent some of these other rules as far as getting the monies together that are needed, maybe to do the archaeology report or whatever? Is there possible that the Westside Gazette can be that ground zero to keep everybody up to date as far as what's going on, so the community knows exactly what's going on, where to be to voice their opinions?
Yes, if I can respond to that. What I was planning on doing, I know they had a meeting tonight with the pastors. I had spoken to Representative Williams about putting a community meeting together because there was one established, but they didn't find out anything. And people are walking around trying to figure out what's going on. They don't have a clue. So I think between now, they say in November, we need to move forward, have another community meeting together, explain to the individuals, because people think they're going to sell the bodies. They need to explain to the people in the community what is taking place.
Right.
That they're oblivious to that. My mother's 85 and she's still asking a question because when she comes, she wants to know. Although she's one of those that is going to be out and forthcoming. Now, as far as the state is concerned, I just got with them Monday. They sent me an email back saying they were expediting this because normally it takes 45 days. I told it we didn't have that kind of time. But because, like I said, when they see certain things, they can come in. And when people are saying their bodies are moved, even though it's a nonprofit. So I have someone calling back to the state on Friday. And I'm also going to be meeting with Mr. I think his name is Rick Ferrara of the Preservation Board, Roberta. I believe that's his name. He wants to speak with me
Yeah,
tomorrow.
Rick
So to
Ferrer.
move
That's correct.
forward, because there's an issue. Even though Roberta has done it for the state, Pompano moved away from county. So they have to have it separately. So then you're going before the zoning board again. So we're going to try to put something together. And I've been trying to engage the community to say, look, certain people, like you said, you got too many groups and whatever they're doing. We need to come together. And I believe that me, myself, and the representative, and also Kevin, we need to put a meeting together prior to November, so
Right.
people can understand what's going on. Let me make this note: the cemetery is approximately 4.273 acres. They didn't understand the proposed portion. You keep saying it is 4.42%, but that only leaves us with 9.853 acres. And we've already used 8.36 acres, they're
Right.
saying. So
Exactly.
in the future, we're only going to have 1.493. So we have to come together, explain to the community what's going on so they can be all on board, not just a group, all of them, because some of the people that we're meeting with, they are part of the problem that was on the board. And Richard, we need to do this quickly and be on board together and support each other so we can quit having these different meetings and all these different things going on and unify. That's the only way we're going to conquer this.
Mhm. Okay. Let me ask you this: um, if a person wanted to contact um, anybody on this platform, do you mind putting your phone number in the box so we can post it? Or I mean, it has to be it has to be a come together. Somebody has to be able uh, to bring this process together. Yeah, we've been covering this for a long time. I remember, like I say, I have a letter that was written in 2008 asking for some help for the situation. So it's nothing new. It becomes new when things are disseminated for sensational purposes, as opposed to bringing the community together. So uh, we will have another conversation to bring in the legal points of this. Uh, I don't want to jeopardize anybody's position from any hearsay, libel stuff, but we do need to make clear the accusations, uh, what happens because of the accusations, and even uh, once it's proven who's behind those allegations. So this is not over with just yet. We're just touching the surface.
Mm-hmm.
So if we can wrap this up, our producer, she has two beautiful girls that are in school and she has to get in bed. So if we can go around and spend 1 minute and wrap this up, uh, that would be good. And what I'd like for us to wrap up with uh, is uh, how would you suggest we go about this? We'll start with you first, State Representative. How would you suggest we go about bringing the community together to address this situation?
Unity, and we need that now. Coming together.
I would
speak
say, State Representative Williams says, unity, but again, just getting a format where there's one location. I mean, like bringing all these groups together. Everyone seems to have a lot of valuable information and working really hard to resolve this, but it's all scattered. If we can just, like Terry said, bring it all together, the pastors are on board, have them put the information out at church. So just bringing everybody to one place, one meeting, community center, wherever, but bringing everyone to one place. I don't believe that people do not care, because if you go into the cemetery, it looks like sometimes everyone just died today because there's flowers everywhere. So they're visiting, they do love their loved ones, and they just don't know what to do. So if we can all be brought together in one location and share that information, I think you'll get a lot more support from the community.
Okay. Roberto?
What I would suggest is that if people have loved ones, and they're looking for some way to get information to at least one of us, they could contact any of us, or even for myself, the community can reach out to me via, they can call Plantation High School and I can call them back, or they can contact me on my cell phone, 813-603-7275. But let people know that you have family there. I believe in my heart of hearts that they do have records, and I really believe that to some extent some of this is because of a lack of funding that the cemetery has had, because it's only $1,000, so they've just been kind of like trying to keep it afloat, but they haven't maintained it perpetually like we would prefer. But I do think that there are records. Gene, I think you mentioned that there were receipts and stuff like that. So if you have records like that, like take a photo of it, email it to me, or email it to the state representative. Like, let's get all of that information somewhere, because that will be helpful when we go, if we have to do a from the ground mapping of the cemetery. That's going to help. It's a document. Any little shred of paper, you have the memorial brochures that we make for our loved ones when they pass that tells their story. That's important. So if you have any documentation like that, and you want to drop it in the mail, you can send it to Plantation High School. I'll have my students collect it. We'll start making binders and stuff like that with all of this, paperwork. If people don't want to share originals, at some point we could probably set something up where we can do like a scanning day and we can scan documents. Definitely over the summer when I have free time, I can post up at the Gazette and we can just have people like drive by and drop stuff off. We can do that. But I think that's an important aspect too, is if we have information, we need to, share it. So sorry for being...
Thank you. Carrie?
I'm going to put a meeting together, and all the community is going to be invited. All the individuals, whether the lawyers, Ed Phillips and the group, the committee, they have to do this. It is imperative. I'm also going to ask people to come out to the cemetery. Like I said, we're working, we just touched on it, about trying to map it. I have someone that was trying to draw a map. We did the rows, went through each row to try to find what we can. I'm going to also invite them out there to come and bring some shovels too, to shovel up the weeds and stuff that we see, where graves are under there. And then make it a little cleaner where people can come in and try to find some things out. But I am going to put a community meeting together. Bobby will be one of the first to know. We'll be putting it on Hot 105. And once we secure the location at EPAT Larkins, to have the individuals come out. We need to explain these things to them. The board will be invited via a certified letter, so they can come too. They need to come and explain some things to these people. I know that we talked about wanting the board to be removed. I don't know when that vote is going to come up, but it needs to come up quickly. Mm-hmm. So we do need to bring them out, and I will make sure you know that I will be putting an event together for the community to come out.
Kevin?
Yeah.
I think whatever Terry, Pat talked about for us being unified is very, very important. I think each and every one of us bring some valuable information to the table. But being unified and putting it all together, I think once you put it all together, you're going to have I don't want to say dream team, but you're going to have a team that's going to be reckoned with, and that's what we need. But like she said, we need to first get everybody together. And our biggest voice has been always in the church, and we met with the clergy today, and hopefully the word will start getting out, start talking about it more, and then the community will know how serious we are about this, so we can get it taken care of.
Okay. Perry?
Well, first of all, thank all of you for joining us. This has been I don't really want to say a wonderful conversation, but it has been an enlightening conversation. And if there's anything that I could say is more in line with Roberto, we don't know how many families this impacts. We're thankful for the few people that it did impact and their passions. But I tell Bobby all the time, I am so tired of having other Juneteenth-like events in my life where we find out the news so many years later. In this information age, and I think one of the things that we do need to do, as Roberto is doing, is really find out what families, because one of the things is if we want people to have some sort of stake in this game, how can they have stake if they don't know that they have loved ones there? Because that's when they get a stake in the game. And for some of us, I heard someone say that if you don't know who your great grandparents are, there is a 90% chance that your great children won't know who you are. And so when that happens, if they don't know who you are, then they're not even looking for you where you buried. And so this is important for us. If we want to talk about leaving a legacy, we've got to be our own historians. And so I thank all of you for this, and I do hope that we will continue to document our course, because this is really worth fighting for. So thank all of you.
And if I could, I see there's something in the chat box that has already given a caption to a cause. The Grave Protector Team. That is truly exactly what it is. And I want to say too, to those who have made comments that we didn't get a chance to read them out loud, we do apologize, but we will, however, the next time, make sure we read everything that comes across the screen. The other thing I want to say is there's an African-American burial ground and remembering project, but that comes from the University of Florida, and it's in the Tampa Bay area. But that's perhaps something we can draw some energy from. There are organizations, there are funds, if you will, that would assist in getting us to where we need to be. I do believe that we're not just doing this for Westview Community Cemetery.
Right.
We're doing it for the cemetery in Beaumont, Texas, for the one in Maryland, to those who were buried under the sidewalk and parking lots in those areas, and to all of those desecrated grave sites across this country. And I want to end by saying this. I want to thank God that those cemeteries, wherever they are, whatever condition they're in, that they are not our final resting place. So good night to all. Take care. God bless. And we will do this again. Right?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you very much. Have a good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.
Mhm.